Hello, and welcome to the webinar presented in collaboration with the Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia MGMA. We'd like to thank today's webinar sponsors, the New York MGMA and Milmick Insurance Company. Today's presentation is led by the folks at Simon's Agency. We have Andrew Politi. Andrew brings over 35 years of experience working within the credit and collections industries. He spent 10 years in the banking industry handling the credit and collections departments, as well as utilizing third-party collections, working with collections agencies and collections attorneys. He spent the last 25 years working with national collection agencies as a sales executive and trainer. He's given numerous talks in the healthcare arena over that time on topics such as accounts receivable management, hiring the right agencies, when to utilize third-party influence, making payment arrangements, and many more. John Vigiano has over 8 years of experience in marketing, communications, and multimedia design with Simon's Agency, and has also worked for the agency during his college years as a collection specialist, giving him a well-rounded view of debt recovery operations, and in particular, medical collections. John maintains Simon's social media, website, blogs, and newsletters, often contributing content to each, and provides design, branding, and marketing work as a part of his regular duties. Please welcome Andrew and John.
Well, Erin, thank you very much for the introduction. I appreciate it. And I want to welcome you all to today's seminar, welcome Re-Energizing Your Accounts Receivable. And thank you all for participating from around the states and the MGMA. Again, Erin had mentioned I've spent many years in the credit and collections industry, and I've spent the last 25 years in the healthcare industry, specializing there, working for collection agencies. So I want to get started with this, and real quick again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in, and if they're pressing, we will get to them. John is going to monitor that for us, and if they can be, wait till the end, we will address it all at the end. Okay, so re-energizing your accounts receivable. I'm going to focus on 3 areas today, and that is going to be a collection strategy 101, negotiating payments, and how to choose the right agency. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on all these categories for you. So the first one is collection strategy 101. We're going to go over a little bit about what the AR is to you, what it means to you, the process of getting information, and nowadays permissions to handle certain things on your intake sheets. And we're going to discuss the 90-day collection cycle, as well as what I call diminishing returns. So let's get started with assets. What is an asset? Let's be perfectly clear. An asset is owned by you, your company, your practice, and that's where anybody that has left an account unpaid. Okay, and that has now become an asset on the balance sheet. Okay, you have the right to do with that asset as you please. You can write it off, you can use an attorney, you can use a collection agency, you can do nothing with it, but make no mistake, that receivable is an asset. Now, there's 3 things. I just want to let you be aware that assets do depreciate. They're still an asset if they're less than 90 days old. When they go beyond 90 days, the banks no longer will view that as an asset. And we're also going to get into the present and future value of assets as we go along. And you'll see how that correlates during the presentation. Okay, so one of the things we're going to look at is your patient intake forms. Now, a lot of you, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on some of this because most of you are getting all of this anyway. You know, you're getting the full name of the patient and or the guarantor, the mailing address, date of birth. And date of birth is real important. That's highlighted in blue only because when you're dealing with practices that have minors, pediatrics, and things of that nature, we need the date of birth so that they know exactly if you're dealing with a minor or not. Social Security number is also very important. I know today you're going to get a lot of feedback, or a lot of, I should say, back and forth with patients that don't want to give you a Social Security number. And let's be honest, as a facility, a practice, or a doctor really need your Social Security number to cure you? Obviously not. However, it has become a unique identifier. Okay, just think about in today's world, a child being born cannot leave the hospital without a Social Security number, because let's face it, there's more than one John Doe living in a household. So that's real important. And again, we have here cell, home, work, the different phone numbers, email addresses. And what I'm going to focus in just a little bit on here is permissions. And that is permissions to contact when you're using technology, okay? And I want to be able to address this with you, okay? You're going to have under your handouts to the right of your screen there is a section that we have on a Verizon case under legislation that you guys can review, and I want you to look at that to review. Because the FDCPA was written back in 1978, they've come up with the CFPB rule changes that are coming up on that, and that is, you know, what permissions do you need to contact a patient today because of the cell phones and the emails. So it's real important. Again, we're not attorneys. I don't profess to be one. Always check with your corporate counsel on the exact language you have to put. But there should be some language on there that's approved by them, the attorneys, that you have for being able to contact patients and or your agents, which would include collection agencies, to be able to contact them by their cell phone and or their email address. Okay, and that's real important. And make sure that you check that out under our handouts. We printed that out for you so you can read it. And again, any verbiage, please run by your attorneys, as I do not profess to be an attorney. And again, these things are going to come into play with you because it is going to require some oversight on your part on anything that you do over your third-party vendors. So make very clear that anything that happens, if they come after us for a violation, they will come after you also. Okay, so it's real important that you read that and you get your permissions all in order, because again, in 1978, when the FDCP was written, there was no cell phones and there was no emails to contact people. That has happened today. So the CFPB has wrote some proposed rule changes. Okay, so one of the things that we're asked a lot is, you know, when should we send somebody to collections? Okay, and everybody has a different idea, you know, when should somebody really be sent to collections? And there's all sorts of programs out there. Obviously, there's the early out programs, the pre-collects, third-party collections. But when you're talking about sending somebody to collections, you're talking about third-party bad debt, and when should you send them? We've come up with a 90-day collection cycle, and I want to share that with you. Now, this is not written in stone. That doesn't mean that everything has to go full 90 days. But this is the cycle when you don't hear from your patients, when you're sending out your statements and you never hear back from them. So what is the 90-day collection cycle? Day one, insurance pays, right? It takes you a little bit of time, maybe 30 days or so to get filed and paid by the insurance company, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, it all depends, okay? You do not receive payment after 30 days. A bill goes out and you send it to your patients. And again, this may differ from all your practices. I'm not here to change management as far as the actual number of days where you are, but your first bill goes out, okay, after insurance pays, okay, and sometimes it's right away, sometimes it's 30 days, but that's the first bill to the patient. If you don't hear from the patient after another 30 days, you're at day 60 that we call it. And the bill is what? If you notice there, I wrote past due in red. And the reason for that is that if your software companies, your billing companies that you're using, whether it's internal or external, if they have a font color availability to you, we suggest you put this on the bill past due and in red and a larger font size than normal so it stands out. They paid consultants a lot of money to come up with this and what colors to use and how big the font should be. And they come up and said that red is the color that they want, that gets the most attention. And as long as the font size is bigger than the regular fonts that are on the bill or the statement you're sending out, will get their attention. Now, again, you don't hear from the patient. They do not call in. There's no other communication. You wait another 30 days. You're at pretty much day 90, and you're going to send out what? We have here, our recommendation is a final notice. And after that final notice, you could put some verbiage in there that says, if your account is not paid within 10 days or 15 days, whatever you're going to put, we recommend no more than 15 days, usually an average of 10 days from the billing date. If it's not paid by then, you could say you're subject to being sent to collections. And it's a final notice because why? Well, they've sent out your insurance you got paid by the insurance, you send a bill to the patient, they didn't pay the first one, you send out a second bill, it's a past due bill, they didn't pay that. Now it's the third bill. They're not paying that, so what are you going to do? It has to be a final notice. So you want to use some continuity to your bills. Just sending them out as well as sending statements out doesn't do anything. And what you're doing is you're looking to get somebody to call in. It's very inefficient for you to make phone calls. And to be honest with you, as well as any agency that's out there, yes, it's inefficient to make phone calls because why? Because of voicemails today and everything else, screening calls, getting through is going to be rather difficult. The last statistics that we hear is it takes about 3.5 to 4 attempts to reach somebody today because of all that. So you're doing this designed to get the patient to call in, because when a patient calls in, it's much more effective than you calling out. Okay, they're calling in for a reason. Okay, and again, if this 90-day collection cycle, okay, you can interrupt it at any point. If you send your first bill out to the patient and they literally tell you, listen, I have no idea, no intentions of paying this. I didn't like the doctor. Stick it in your ear in so many words. I'm not going to pay it. Do you send out a past due bill and a final notice bill? No. It's costing you too much money to get mail out the door today. Okay? You don't want to continue it. They've already told you they're not going to pay it. Again, this is an asset. It's a receivable. Receivable is an asset. It's early in the cycle. It's less than 90 days. Okay? You have the right to do with that asset as you please. You can put them in collections at day 30. If they told you they're not going to pay the bill and they have no intentions, you're not required to do anything else to go to these 60-day and the 90-day. This is designed for the patients that you don't hear from. Okay? The law of diminishing returns, and really what is this? And I'll read the first line because I think it's real important. Time is never on your side when dealing with delinquency. The longer an account sits, the less chance there is to collect it. And I will say this, complaints increase with time. And I'm sure you've seen this in your practice. When the patient is there and they're sick and the doctor makes them feel better and they're happy and you were the greatest doctor in the world at that time, that is the time to get paid. That is when the patient is most satisfied. When we say complaints increase with time, you ever notice that you're trying to collect the same debt 6 months down the road, and the same patient who thought you were the best doctor there ever was when they felt better, suddenly has complaints. All of a sudden when you call them, they didn't feel any better, I had to go see another doctor, and all of a sudden the complaints start coming out. And that is because time is never on your side, okay? When you're dealing with delinquency, you want to get this account paid as soon as possible. And you can check out the graph there that's on the left. This is put out by Inside Arm. This is your success of collecting accounts. You have the greatest success in less than 30 days, and then it starts to diminish drastically. So your timeline, again, you have your 90-day collection cycle. You're going beyond that, we're going to have a problem, okay? And there's some statistics that are put out there. And this 90-day collection cycle that we came up with was not all of us. It also has to do with some statistics that were put out there. The American Collectors Association, their latest statistics says that approximately 92% of the American population will pay their bills or make arrangements to pay their bills in the first 90 days. Okay, that's where we came up with this. If somebody is going to make arrangements or pay your bill, they're going to do so in the first 90 days. After 90 days, we call it you're no longer competing in the marketplace for their money. That's why time is never on your side. So let's move on, okay? And this is where we're going to get into negotiating payments. And I want to spend probably the most amount of my time on this one because I think this is the most important part that comes into play when patients are calling in and broken promises are happening or the arrangements aren't being kept. So there's a few things that you're going to have to deal with when negotiating payments. The first thing is we're going to call is understanding the 3 W's. And I'm going to advance to that slide. You know, what are the 3 W's? Okay, this is what we call the rules of engagement. Before you even start your process of negotiating, you have to get these under control. One is, who can you talk to about the debt? Obviously, you could talk to the patient unless they're a minor. If they're not a minor, you can talk to the patient. Now, every state is different, so you have to understand also the laws of your state. I believe in both New York and New Jersey, okay, just going forward, that a husband and wife are equally responsible for each other's medical bills. They can have credit in their own names. They can have separate credit cards, in which case the spouse, if they're not signed on it, is not responsible. But medical debts in certain states are sometimes both parties are 100% responsible. So know who you can speak to. Now, I will say this, be careful also when you have somebody today that you can have a child on your insurance policy, and I believe it's up to age 26 in certain states, and I know New Jersey and New York may be two of them, okay? Even though that patient is under your insurance, they are over 18, you cannot speak to them if they're your child, okay? So if they're the patient, the parent's child, you cannot, okay? You can't disclose anything to them. You must get permission, and be careful on your permission, whether it be in writing or verbally, and ask the right questions of who you're speaking with, that you can talk to them. So you do not want to be talking to the wrong person. Now, when can you talk to somebody about a bill? Okay. Obviously, you don't want to speak to a patient before the first bill even goes out about a bill because they haven't gotten it yet. But know certain laws that you can do, and it's always best to check with your agency if you're using one, okay, about what laws they are governed by, that they're allowed to call somebody, a patient, during the course of the business day and on weekends. And we always say you're not governed under the same laws, but if you adhere to the same, you'll be very safe. For the most part, Monday through Friday, you are safe in calling from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. And they have opened up times for the weekends that can be called. I don't know if you want to do that. Again, your own practice has their own management, and you have your own rules that you can do, and I'm not here to go against that. But just when you can call, make sure that you're calling around those times. Do you want to call somebody at 6 o'clock in the morning? Probably not. And I'm sure none of you want to get up that early in the morning to get to the office to start calling people about a debt. And also calling people after 8 o'clock. I'm sure you don't want to do that either. So you're safe between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Okay, you do not want to call after that. So knowing when you can call is important. And the last one is why. Why are you calling them? Okay, now use technology to your advantage in your practices with the sophistication that you have of technology with the screens today, that you can toggle through your screens about your patient with the demographics, the financials, and everything else to know why you're calling them. Are you calling them because it's a broken payment arrangement? Are you calling them because it is just a missed promise? Are you calling them because their credit card came back and is no longer good? Are you calling them because you're returning a call? Are you calling about appointment missed? Okay, so knowing the 3 W's about why you're dealing with a patient, why you're calling a patient, helps you sound more intelligent, okay? And if you have the technology to your advantage, toggling through the screens allows you to see all this at your fingertips. You don't want to have to get back to somebody if they ask you a question and then you don't have the information in front of you, and then you have to call them back. And we just said, trying to call somebody back today, it's going to take you 3 to 4 attempts to reach somebody. And in your case, doing manual dialing, 3 to 4 attempts could be almost a month. Okay, so know why you're calling them, have all your information. These are what we call the rules of engagement before you make that initial phone call. And let's move on now. Payment arrangements. Making effective payment arrangements. Most of you out there are good and you collect money and you're very good at it. And one of the only things that we hear is that a lot of our practices will tell us that broken promises. They make arrangements with the patient and the promises are broken. And they're wondering how to get around that. How do we get around broken promises, or how do we make arrangements where the promises are less likely to be broken? And we're going to share that with you. And I promise you on this and all my seminars that I give, I'm going to give you something you can take back to your practice and you can actually try and use. And I'm always interested that if it works or doesn't work, I want to hear from you, because I want to see if this is really working. And it is over the time. I've seen it work. I've had it, but I want to make sure it's working for you and that you're trying it. And it's always nice to hear success stories. So how to make effective payment arrangements. I'm sure that most of you have started out, this is going to sound familiar. You call John Doe up, patient. John Doe owes you $300. And John Doe is very honest with you. He says he can't afford it. And then you ask John Doe, well, how much can you afford? And John Doe says $10 a month. And then you say, well, that's not acceptable. We can't accept $10 a month. $50 a month is the best we can do. And John Doe says, nope, I told you, I can't afford it. Best I can do is $10 a month. If you don't take it, then you're out of luck. That's all I have. Take it or leave it. Stand in line with everybody else. And I'm sure this conversation, to a certain extent, sounds very familiar to a lot of you. And you're wondering why this happens. And it is because you're handling payments and arrangements in terms of affordability versus time. And I'm going to show you a little bit of difference in the how you say it to get him in terms of time, where you're not putting him in a mindset of affordability. So I'm going to move on to the next slide and start sharing this with you. And this is the art of negotiations, okay? And this saying that's right on this screen, feel free to write down. You're going to get an audio of this, so you'll have it. But who's ever doing the collections, feel free to use this. And this is what I want to hear from you if this is actually working. So this time you're talking to John Doe, and John Doe says to you, I can't afford it. So instead of saying to John, how much can you afford? What you say, today being Friday, and of course always use the day of the week that you're calling on. Today being Friday, how much time do you need to pay the balance of $300 in full today being Friday? Now you notice I have a zipper across somebody's mouth there, and I put at the bottom, next person who speaks loses. You're going to want to be quiet at this point. You want John Doe to respond. Now, it's called the 3-second eternity rule, I call it, because 3 seconds of silence on the phone is going to sound like an eternity. You're going to want to say something, but don't. Let John Doe respond. And you're saying here, okay, now what's the difference? The difference is when you ask somebody how much time do they need, and you repeat the day of the week twice, you've created a sense of urgency. He is going to be thinking about what? And if you're all out there thinking, you probably guessed it, he's going to be thinking, when do I get paid next? So very quickly in his head, he's going to say, well, I get paid every 2 weeks. I get my commission check at the end of the month, and he's figuring out real quick when he's going to pay this because today is Friday. Now, most people, I say most, but if you get a mathematician or an engineer on the phone, this is probably not going to work. Most people cannot divide more than 3 when you have them on the phone on the spur of the moment. In most cases, somebody's going to say, well, let's see, I get paid at the end of the week. I get paid every 2 weeks. I can do $100 a month real fast, and they can do it. And even if this balance was a little bit off, let's just say it was $352.82. To them, it's still $300. They're going to say $300 a month, $100 a month, and then they'll make up to $52.82 on the last payment or whatever. Okay, but they're going to divide very quickly by 3. They might even probably in some cases do it by 2, because they might very quickly say 150 this paycheck, 150 next paycheck. And they're very quickly on the phone now calculating it, okay? Now here's my standing invitation to everybody out there, and I haven't been called on it. I hope I never am, but it's out there. If anybody comes back to you and you say it just the way that we have it here on the screen, anybody comes back to you and says, well, I need 47 months to pay this bill. Dinner is on me. I will happily come there and take you out to dinner, because I've never had anybody come back and say that a patient has said that, because they don't go back and think of what they can afford, in this case, $10 a month, the original scenario, and they're going to come back to you and say, well, I need 30 months. It's just not going to happen. Because why? You created a sense of urgency by repeating the day of the week twice, and you asked them how much time they need. You didn't ask them how much they can afford. There's an old statement. People afford what they want when they want it, okay? And it's very simple that, if I told everybody out there, okay, listen, do you have $5,000 in your pocket right now? Most people would say, no, I don't have $5,000. But if I said to you, listen, I have a brand new 2020 Mercedes outside that I own outright, but I'm a little strapped for cash. I need $5,000 and the title is yours. How fast would some of you come up with the money? And why? And I'm just using that as an example, unless you hate Mercedes, but I'm using an example saying that you can afford what you want when you want it, okay? Does anybody want to pay a past due medical bill? No, you are a service, right? You provided a service. Once the service is performed, what's the incentive to pay? And this reverts all the way back to what we said in the beginning, that time is never on your side, okay? What is the incentive for somebody to pay 6 months down the road, okay? And the other thing we talked about is complaints increase with time. They were happy when they were in the office and you made them feel better and you cured them and you gave them a shot or some medicine and doctor gave them some news that they felt better about. But 6 months down the road, they're going to come up with complaints about all the reasons why they didn't pay this bill. Okay, so this has to do with, again, write this statement down. Okay, if it helps you, you can plagiarize it. I don't mind. We want people to use it. All right, so this is all for your use. Okay, but remember, try to be quiet because the next person who speaks loses. Now, somebody might come back and with a statement and say something like, well, I need forever. And you very simply come back and say, seriously, John, today being Friday, how much time do you need? Today being Friday, And then again, what you're also doing is, which is very important, you're making a distinction of whether this person is going to pay or they're not going to pay. Remember, you only have two types of patients out there, right? It's only have two. Ones that pay and ones that don't. It's the only two that are out there. So you're trying to be 100% make a determination which are the payers from the not payers. This is one of the ways that's going to help you, okay? Some people are going to pay you. They give you the credit card. Those are the payers. Some people are going to flat out and tell you they're not paying it, which is fine. They're not going to pay it. Move it off to the next phase, which is send them out to collections, or in your case, if it's small amounts, you might write it off. But in either case, definitively what the patient's going to do. This right here will tell you if the person's serious about paying, they will make an arrangement. If they're not serious about paying, they're not going to answer the question. They're not going to make a negotiation with you. There's one other thing that this does, and this is real important, which was what I said in the beginning, that the payment arrangements, the complaints we're getting is that these payments that they make or their broken promises, that patients are not sticking to the arrangements that were made. And one of the reasons is because you put them on your payment arrangement, okay, versus the patient. In this case, if the patient says, I'll pay you $150 this month, $150 next month, whereas even if he said, I'll pay you $100 a month over the next 3 months, he put himself on his own payment arrangement. He is less likely to break the arrangement because he put himself on it. And I'm sure you've heard the other scenario, which is that if you told them what your minimum payment arrangement is, this is the best we can do, okay? He's going to pay once or twice if you're lucky. He's not going to pay anymore. You're going to get him on the phone and tell me if this doesn't sound familiar. Well, I told you I couldn't afford it. You told me I had to pay it, but I couldn't afford it. So I tried on the first one. I just can't do it. I told you I couldn't afford it, but you told me I had to. And if that sounds familiar, that is because you put him on your payment arrangement. If he puts him on his own payment arrangement, it's less likely it's going to be broken. Not saying that it won't. This is not foolproof, but it's less likely. And if you think about it, most of your offices, if you had a $300 debt, the minimum arrangement you would want probably is $50 a month. And think about it, that's 6 months. If he sticks to every payment, every month, $50, it's going to take you 6 months to get this paid. The patient, in this case, by asking it this way, time versus affordability, either 2 months or 3 months, has going to get you paid faster, in some cases, twice as fast. Even if he goes out 3 months, it's still twice as fast as getting paid as your arrangement, as your office arrangement, if you allow them to go on their own payment arrangement. And we also talked about present value versus future value. Even at $50 a month, which may be your office minimum, what's it worth 6 months down the road? Or even if you're collecting these accounts, you know, a $300 debt, if they go a year without paying it, and it takes you that long to package it up and maybe get it out to the agency you're using, and it takes the agency 2 months to get it paid, or 3 months, you know, you're talking 15 months down the road. $300 worth the same today or from 15 months down the road from now. And of course you want the money sooner. Even at 6 months, I have a feeling you're probably not making money or breaking even barely at this. Okay? Again, I will say it one more time. Time is not on your side when you're dealing with delinquency. So let's move on. Okay? How to negotiate these payments. And it's what we call the art of effective listening. And as you go through this, I'm going to ask some of you out there and just to think about some of these answers. Who has the power, the listener or the speaker? Okay? And think about that. I want to know, who do you think has the most power during a negotiation, the listener or the speaker? And I've had almost 50-50, and I do live seminars, and people think the speaker does and some people think the listener does. What I'm here to tell you is that the listener holds all the power. They do. And there's a reason why. If you look at the second checkbox that's highlighted in a little bluish color, we speak at about 140 words a minute, the average person. Again, these are averages. But we can listen at better than 500 words a minute. If you're listening to the patient, you're going to hear something that's very valuable. If you're speaking all the time, you're not going to hear them. You're not going to find out information. The only way to find out information is to listen. Okay? Now remember, the last two boxes that I have here, hearing is involuntary. Everybody can hear unless you close your ears, put earmuffs on. Listening is voluntary. You have to make an effort to listen. And I'm going to make a real life situation there, how this comes into play. And you've all had this in your own lives at some point. You bought something on the internet, and or you may have bought something in a store. You've taken it home or you've gotten it delivered. Something went wrong. Either the merchandise is no good, it's not what you ordered, it's broken, something went wrong. You call up the toll-free number and you speak to customer service. And they ask you what the problem is, and you go through your whole spiel and you tell them exactly what's wrong. And then when you hear what they're saying on their response to you, you can tell they didn't listen to a word you're saying, and that infuriates you. And it does. It's happened to me, because you're trying to explain to somebody exactly what went wrong or what happened, and you can tell by the way they answered that they didn't listen to a word you were saying. Now, do you want that going on in your practice because you're not listening? Okay? Got to remember, bad things happen to good people. Medical debt is much different than any other debt. Most debt is voluntary. You go out and you purchase something, and you run up the debt. Credit card debt, you go out and buy clothes, shoes, maybe a car, something, vacation. It's voluntary debt. Nobody goes out and voluntarily runs up a medical debt. No one says, I'm going to sit home today, I think I'm going to have my gallbladder taken out, and run up their surgery bill. It's not going to happen, okay? Bad things happen to good people. Therefore, this person is either hurting, had a loved one who's hurting, okay, and they want somebody that's going to listen to them. Our conversations in collections for medical are much longer than the average conversation, what I call dialing for dollars of credit card debt. Okay, credit card debt is simple. Okay, here we got your bill here, American Express. You bought 13 pairs of shoes, a couple of dresses, and you took a vacation, and you got a bill here for $3,000. Okay, it's quite simple. Pay it or not going to pay it. There's no dispute. You bought it. It shows. There's records of it, and you voluntarily ran it up. Okay, like I said, longer conversation when somebody's sick. Okay, they want somebody to talk to. I said bad things happen to good people. Okay, they're hurting right now, or a loved one is hurting. They want somebody to listen to them. In fact, sometimes if you just listen to them, they will just turn around, and if you hear them, write down the important things, they'll pay or they'll make arrangements, okay? But they just want somebody to listen to them. And you're also going to hear something very important. You're going to hear things like, if you're listening, you're going to hear things like, I have secondary insurance. How come it's not on there? Or I already paid the bill. I have a canceled check. I did pay it. I have a credit card receipt. Or you have the wrong insurance. I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but you have it in the wrong state. And that's very common because, as we know, Blue Cross Blue Shield is in almost in every state. And most people use that term generically, Blue Cross Blue Shield. But it makes a difference if you live in New York, but your Blue Cross Blue Shield is from your spouse out of state, okay? If you don't know that up front, okay, something can happen. Now, again, most of you had the insurance cards. It's not always the case, but sometimes people say gave the wrong insurance card. They just got their new ones. The company just changed over. They may have been with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now they're with United Healthcare. You got caught in the turnaround. So, you know, you want to make sure that they have everything in line. And again, if you don't listen, you're not going to hear it. Understanding payer signals. And this will only happen is when you're listening and listening to somebody instead of just hearing. There were 4 types in here, and you're going to hear the willing payer. Now, what is the willing payer? The willing payer is somebody that really wants to pay, but you got to listen for those buying signals. And the willing payer buying signals are things like, is this going to affect my credit if I don't pay it, or if I don't pay it within a certain time? Are you going to report this to the credit bureaus? What are you going to do if I don't pay? These are all some things, I'm just using some examples, of a willing payer. And if you're listening, you're going to hear this. Somebody's concerned about their debt and or their credit. So again, listen and you hear these signals. The other one is a helping hand. Now somebody, you know, is on their heels financially and they want to pay and they want to make arrangements, okay? And they need your help, okay? Or maybe the bill doesn't make sense to them or something went wrong, okay? Listen to them. They're asking for help. And again, know those buying signals, okay? Help them. They're asking for it. Don't just toss them aside. Don't just go through the motions. And again, it's like the customer service example I just told you about. You don't want them just going through the motions and then all of a sudden, you know, you realize the answer they get, they can tell they weren't listened to, and then all of a sudden you got this confrontation. You're also going to hear the staller, and the staller is going to sound something like this. I will pay you when. I will pay you as soon as. This is somebody stalling for time. Do they have any intentions of paying you? Probably not. And this is why you're listening. Those are the kind of things, because let's face it, somebody says, I will pay you when. Well, when what? I mean, when they get their tax refund, when, you know, it's never. They're looking. They're stalling for time. Now, could it be possible that the person says, listen, I'm starting a new job. I don't get paid until the 4th of the next month. Okay, that's a little different. The person's being very specific with you. They're not using just generic terms. I'll pay you as soon as, or I'll pay you, you know, when, you know. So listen for these signals. And the last one, obviously, is an irate caller. You don't have to be too much. You're going to know this one right off the bat. All right, they're going to yell. They're going to be screaming because they're going to be mad that you just put them in collections. Remember, I never advocate taking abuse or profanity and the call quickly. You're not paid enough to take abuse or profanity from somebody, but they're upset that you just put them in collections, okay, or going to put them in collections, and they're irate. They're irate, they got a bill. And how many people said, why do I have a bill? I have insurance. Well, we all know that insurance doesn't cover the whole bill. It's not a perfect system or society where you have insurance and they pay the whole bill and you walk away. It doesn't happen. So the person is irate, and they're probably irate also. Again, being a medical bill, probably in pain, could be hurting, or a loved one, and it's just got to them. It could got to them financially. Let's face it, I've seen medical debts ruin people. You know, people lose certain things, their homes, marriages. I mean, a lot of things can happen because of medical debt. So you're going to get the irate caller on occasion. So these are the 4 types that we've come up with and why you're listening for why you have to be a very good listener and what I call the art of effective listening. Okay, you've gone through all that. Okay, now I'm going to help you a little bit in choosing the right agency. And really what you want to do is you want to choose an agency that's right for your company. Okay, so what is that? Let's start with the first one over to the right up top, the approach. What is their strategy? Is the agency you're hiring on the same wavelength as your practice? Do they have the same philosophy? Remember, an agency is an extension of your billing practice. You don't want the agency to have one ideology and you have another. And this is why there's a good interview process you should have and ask these questions with your agency, okay? You want to ask them certain things that they're going to do. You know, do you want them skip tracing? Do you want them reporting to the credit bureaus? Do you provide legal support? These are all the things you're going to ask. You don't want them doing it without your knowledge anyway, but is this the approach you want to take? If their approach is, listen, we're going to report these people to the credit bureaus, and you may say, no, we don't want our people reported. We don't want the bad PR. You know, you want to find this out up front. You don't want to find this out after it happens. Okay, so find out if the agency's approach is the same strategy as yours. Okay, which leads us right into transparency. Do you know what the agency is doing when they get your account? Do you have an idea of the process? Did they walk you through their process and say, what did they do day one they get the account in, when the phone calls are made, when the notices are sent out, okay? Are reports available to you when you need them? Do they have a client services team? How transparent is the agency, okay? Are they easy to work with, okay? When you call up the agency, are you treated like a debtor or are you treated like a client? Okay, very important, okay, transparency. Now, longevity, this is one of the few industries that longevity plays a very positive role. And we all know that, and I say that because we've seen crazy things happen out there. Companies have been around for a long time, and suddenly they're no longer here anymore, okay? So somebody would say, well, longevity just might mean that, you know, they've been there for so long, they're going to go out of business soon. Not in this case. And the reason being is, and it's going to tie into the next one, contingency, is longevity for the collection agency. Most collection agencies will work on a contingency. And if they're working on a contingency, let's just take that for the assumption, the longer they've been around, the more successful they are. They only get paid when they collect. You pay for their success, not their failures. The longer they've been around, they must be doing a good job. I always say, there's an old saying, you can't fool all the people all the time. They must be doing something right, or else they wouldn't be around as long as they did. Now, that length of time is all depending upon you and management and what you consider longevity. In some cases, could be 5 years, 10 years. Want somebody more than 15, I doubt you know, not saying that a new agency popping up isn't going to be worth it, but you have to think of your company and your money out there, your reputation, your PR. Think about that. The longer a company's been out, if they've been doing things wrong and been sued a lot over the years, they're not going to be around a long time. If they've been around a long time, better than 15 years, okay, they must be doing something right and doing it in a way where they're not being sued by other people and they're surviving. Which leads us into contingency, okay? Most good agencies will work on a contingency, okay? If you're dealing with an agency that wants some kind of money up front, would I be a little skeptical? Yes. And the only reason I say it is not that they're doing anything wrong or doing anything illegal. It's just that what's their vested interest to collect money if they're not on a contingency? If you pay X number of dollars up front, what's their incentive to collect? You want them to work hard for you. And the way to work hard is they need a vested interest to collect the money, which is on a contingency. They're only going to get paid when they're successful. So they're going to try as hard as hell to be successful for you. If you're following me to the left now, we're going clockwise underneath their specialty. The agency that you're hiring, now they don't have to be fully, the entire agency specialized in healthcare, but they must have at least a division and collectors that only collect healthcare. And the reason I say that is that, yes, there are some large agencies that handle retail, non-medical, that handle commercial accounts, and they handle healthcare. But you want to make sure, and you ask the questions, are the collectors assigned to my accounts only handling healthcare. Now, you may not be enough to give them enough that the collector is only collecting your stuff, but are they only collecting healthcare? It's very hard. We talked before. Remember I said it's very simple, and credit card debt, buying clothes, shoes, vacations, that's voluntary. You run up the money. It's a different conversation. The healthcare conversations are much longer, okay, than it is styling for dollars. And it's very hard. If they calling on a credit card, 1 minute, the next minute they pick up the phone and they're talking to a patient, it's very hard to make that transition and do that, especially working 8 hours a day, to make that transition very simply. A lot of mistakes can be made. So make sure that they have a healthcare division. It doesn't mean the whole agency. And also make sure that, are they members of certain organizations within their healthcare division, like the MGMA, the HFMA, AHAM, all the ones that are out there. And the reason being is that they're going to be abreast of all the new information, laws, legislation that's going on out there from these seminars that are given. Just as we came back to you and told us about the Verizon case that you guys can find in your handouts. This all came about because the FDCPA was written in 1978, and as technology changed, they had to do some amendments to this. And this all came about, and we know about it because this was presented at some of these events. And other things are coming out as we speak. All new things are constantly coming out. So you want your agency to be on top of all these things. You shouldn't bring this to their attention. They should know this ahead of time. We try to be very proactive. We see something happening out there, we bring it to our clients' attention and let them know that. The people and the ops, the C-suite people, this is what I'm talking about here and the Better Business Bureau. Now, if the agency's been around a while, that's great. But have the people that are managing the company, your director of operations, your collection managers, are they healthcare? Or are they something else? Do they come from another industry? Okay. Are they experienced in the healthcare market? Okay. Did they come from managing a small equipment leasing portfolio collection department and now suddenly hired to run a healthcare? Okay. You want to know this. You want to know their expertise. You want to know the company's Better Business rating. Do they have one? Okay. Know the length of time the C-suite people. Now, they may be not in healthcare, that long, let's say only 5 years in healthcare, which is okay, but they've been handling collections for the past 20 years. Okay. These are some of the things you want to look at. Okay. Again, you're interviewing these agencies. Now, all of it may not be 100% important to you, but there's enough in here, I think, that you're going to want to pick out. You pick out the things that are important to you, and you focus in on this. This is what we've come up with, we feel is important to you, and you can pick and choose which they fall from order of priority. And lastly, technology. And the reason we put technology in here is because you might be a large company, depending on the agency you're looking at. So in other words, I'm saying, are they too small for you, for your volume? And vice versa. All right. Are you too small for them? Okay. So if you're a small company and they're used to handling volume and you're only going to turn over X number of accounts, are you going to get lost in the shuffle? Okay. Are they so big that the other way around, you're too big, they're so small that they can't handle your volume. And you don't want these accounts laying there not being touched because they can't get to it. Which turns us into, what systems are they using? Do they have advanced technology? Do they have good dialer systems? Do they have portals that are HIPAA compliant to make it easier for you to turn over accounts? Is the placement process? Is the reporting process simple? Can you go online and get your own reports? The days of calling up the agency, listen, I need a status report. I need this report. I got the accountants coming in. We're having a board meeting. I need this. I need that. Today, you should have things at your fingertips. The way technology works today is that you should be able to go online, download the report. There might be some customization, but use technology to your advantage. Okay. Is their system, do they have backups for their system? What happens, with a major storm, blackout, or they got compromised? Is this thing been backed up? What is their backup process? All the things that you should be asking, because this is proprietary information. This is healthcare information that your agency is working with. And lastly, I want to tell you that if you go to our website, and it's right there, we have a free booklet you can download, our ebook. It's the ultimate guide to choosing the right agency. It is free. You came to our seminar, please go on there. Everything I talked about choosing an agency is going to be in this free download. So we hope you take advantage of that. We also have a monthly newsletter that's free. All the stuff that we look at, we have a billing and collection advisor. You can certainly sign up for this. You can either do it on a mobile app or through the website. This is all available to you. And lastly, please give yourselves a nice round of applause. I appreciate you sitting through this with me. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did. And what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to take a look at the chat box. If we have some questions, feel free to start typing them in if you haven't already, and we'll start fielding some questions.
Andy, it doesn't look like we have any questions to start here, so if people would like to ask them, feel free. We'll keep an eye on for a couple more minutes. Caroline did make a point earlier on the 90-day collection cycle that they send their bill out as soon as they receive the insurance payment. So they accelerate the 90-day cycle and within that first 30 days, which is really a nice point.
That is excellent. That's outstanding. I wish everybody could do that. It would really move the cycle along, and that would become a little bit quicker cycle now, make this a 40-day cycle. But that is excellent. Yep, that is excellent. And I will stay on, like you said, John, if anybody has it, I am here. Everybody else that needs to leave is welcome to, and I appreciate it. And there's all our information.